around. Hey everybody, Norm here. Sunday afternoon, well, Sunday just before noon. I just went for a walk through the valley, and I've broken my selfie stick, but I have another adapter in my bag that I will swap out. Sorry, I'm looking at the, I think, deer tracks over here. I'm just gonna go for a walk through the woods here, find a spot to set up a camp, make a cup of coffee, maybe have some lunch, and we will talk about fire lighting. So stick around. I don't know if you guys can see that, but way up at the top of that birch tree is what looks to be a big clump of chaga. It could be some kind of a bracket, but I think it's chaga way up there. I'll walk a little closer to see if we can see it right at the very top where the tree lies. Well, not that I want the poor birch tree to fall down, but if it does fall down, I'll see if I can't find some chaga. I wonder if that's another birch tree over there. I don't want to disturb too many of these animal runs. I can't tell. I mean, this one is almost obviously a dog, but it could be a coyote or something, so I'll follow this one, I guess. Well, I think I found a nice place to set up right here. So I'll set up the GoPro somewhere where I can show you what I'm doing, and we'll set up a little tarp shelter, and we will take it from there. Well, how's that? I have two of these and they are both broken, so no selfie stick for the cell phone. But that's alright. We don't really need the selfie stick for the cell phone. We can manage without it, I do believe. So we shall manage without it. Alrighty, so we're back, and what we made here basically is a pretty sloppy Adirondack shelter. I think that's what they call them. What I tried to do was make it a little bit lower, so instead of going to the second tie out here, I went to the third one, and I think mainly that just threw off the geometry. I'm just not used to setting it up like this. But it's definitely lower. I wanted it just a little bit lower than head height rather than being, you know, walk-in type thing. And what that does is gives us a bigger sidewall area. I could probably tie this out a little better in the back here too. But it gives us a nice big side area, especially if I didn't set it up so sloppily. Anyways, fire. That's what we're here to talk about today. Alright, so fire lighting. Different methods. Friction fire. Percussion. Solar magnification. And then modern methods, I guess, is the easiest way to separate like that. So that's pretty much four main methods of starting fire. So let's talk about fire 4 ways. Alrighty, so just a quick tour of what I did here. I have some cordage, reverse wrap cordage that I made. And I just use that to throw up a toggle here to get my pack off the snow, because it's pretty mild today, so it's anything that sits on the snow for a couple of seconds is going to get pretty wet. I do have my rain poncho in there for a ground sheet, but I should be okay with the ground sheet created by my really sloppy shelter that I set up here. It's better than no shelter, I guess. It'll block the little bit of breeze that there is. And then here I just used a Marlin spike hitch, I believe it's called, or yeah, that's what it's called. I'm going to take some of this birch bark here. We'll use that for our tinder to get some coffee on the go. This is just a prusik, another prusik here with a toggle. I forget the name of this hitch, top line hitch, I believe it's called. And over here is a trucker's hitch modified. Get this excess out of the way. It's just a trucker's hitch modified with an extra wrap through the loop so that it locks itself when you're putting tension on it. And then it's a quick release also. Just pull the toggles and away we go. So yeah, let's try and get some coffee on the go. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna process down some of this wood here and get it ready for a fire, and then I'm gonna start a fire. So stick around. Alright, let's talk about fire by friction. More to the point, a bow drill fire. Bow drill fire is a very old method of fires. It's probably an evolution of the hand drill fire. And there are other variations of the bow drill fire, like the pump drill. There's also a strap drill. Which is the one where you hold it in your mouth, the bearing block, instead of your hand, and you pull side to side with the strap. Piece of leather, generally speaking. That's a more northern climate method. But yeah, I got my fire lay all ready to go, so I'll bust out my bow drill kit, see if I can't get an ember, and start a fire and get some coffee on the go. we've got our tinder bundle or bird's nest ready. You've seen that I stuck a little bit of birch bark in the center of my jute. I like to do that just because once it flames up, it lets the flame sustain a little better and burn a little hotter. It's sort of just a flash tinder added in there to give it a little more oomph. And another thing I like to do is I like to take a couple of little sticks, and if you take your little sticks and you sort of just stick them inside your tinder bundle like so, if your tinder bundle starts to get hot, too hot to hold, especially when you're working with a small one like this, that will give you a handle to hold on to so you don't burn yourself. So let's see how that works out for us. I'm just going to prepare my fireboard here. So the first step is, well, I'm going to need a bow. So I will go and source a bow, and I shall return momentarily. Alright, we've got our bow. What this is just, it can be a curved or a straight stick. Curved is a little easier to work with. About the length from armpit to fingertip. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't have to have, but if it has a fork in the end, it makes it a little easier to work with. Yeah, and that's it. So I'm just going to beaver to a little notch in the end here, just to hold onto my bowstring a little bit. It doesn't have to be pretty, you know, unless you were making one to keep permanently, then you might want to make it pretty. But that should be good enough for us. And I'm using paracord for the bowstring. Any multitude of cordage will work. So, pretty tight, but not too tight. The cordage will stretch. So that should do us for our bow. Alright, let's get a burn in going on. My bowstring's climbing on me a little bit there. Try this again. Alrighty. Gonna round this off a little bit. My bow kind of flattened out a bit. My spindle, sorry. And also by removing some of the charred material, I will also create a a little bit more friction on the next go around. So now what I'll do is pull out my trusty Victorinox here. And what we want is a notch. Sort of V-shaped. Not too wide. Alright, there's our notch. It's not pretty. A little wider at the bottom than at the top. That'll let the dust gather towards the bottom a little better. And then I find if you take your knife and you scoop a little bit out of the bottom here, what that'll do is allow the air to circulate, give you a little better chance at getting an ember and sustaining that ember. Alright, so we use some of the free dust that we got there from the burn-in. And now what we'll do is see if we can't get ourselves a fire started. I'm not quite sure what I did there. Got a little bit twisted up. Get the snow out of the way. I'm not dragging it onto my ember. That won't help. Alright, so as I may have mentioned, the battery died just as I was starting to get an ember. So what I'm going to do now is try again to get an ember here, since I, killed the battery. So for now, I'm just trying to fill this hole up with dust. Pretty good amount of dust. Once it's got a good amount of dust in it, I'll bear down a little harder and a little faster. Alright, let's see what we can do here. So, just a note, some bad practice there. You see me really shorten my strokes. That's not a good thing, except in this case where I was going to lose the spindle. because the bowstring was climbing on me. So I had to slow it down a bit in order to not lose it and have to start again. So it looks like we got an ember there. We will just let that percolate ever so slightly. Use some of this other dust in there and try and let it out from the board so it can get a bit more air. It is very damp today. I can see the quality of my dust is suffering. It's really gunky, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Yeah. Sure. Let's see if we can't get a fire going. I'm not sure how well you guys can see me. Okay, let's see how this will work out for us.
To the rhythm made out of brown paper. Sounds that we bring are of a different nature. Rhythms get greater and the rhythms they get greater. Yes, another rougher tough form for the chaser. New configuration, new riff and new structure. Built on the frame that'll hold and won't puncture. Tight, we wrap it up, it's wrapped tightly. It lives, the bass is the hobby that it gives. When we apply the brakes, there'll be no skips. Just more elements to continue as we glide. Dimensions and the measurements and the evidence you will find. Change and rearrange it so it's regularly updated. It's from every angle so it's met the unexpected. Represent the fusion of the mind and stay connected. The star that is presented, the size of the mark that's been indented. Deliberate the star we give you, so that means you meant it. In your direction it's the bearing that we aim to sense it. Instead of waiting for a star, now better reinvent it. And let you get your money's worth before you've even sent it. Make it bigger for the whole nation. Send it down to one to know with no discrimination. Like I say, for 50 knocks there's many combinations. No matter which way that you turn, you reach the same destination. The fullness of the spectrum, 360 keep it circling. Deep inside the flow is where it's working it. Underneath submerging it. Time to make it go deeper. Way past the point that blows holes in your speaker. Under and over to get over and under. First you get the lightning and then you get the thunder. The sound is the music and the music is the feature.
Somewhere flat and with a bit of airflow. Getting a little bit blocked on this backside here by the screen.
Yes, another of us form for the chaser. New configuration, new riff and new structure. Belts on the frame that'll hold and won't puncture. Tight, we wrap it up, it's wrapped tightly. Step, 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 step. Paper, paper, paper. Step, 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 step. Step to the rhythm made out of brown paper. Paper, 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 paper. Step, 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 step. Paper, 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 paper. Step, 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 step.
Alright, let's let that percolate for a little bit while I go and gather a little bit more wood, because this wood is all a lot redder than it seems.
tools for the blind mind, the lights of dark steps, increase reps, take names for world range, title class, outlast like a jet blast. Step on the pedal, you fuse on empty. You lack civilization, the nation out with warriors, senators, governors, emperors, princes to the palace and noblemen. Opening books to clarify the message makes it confuse. Fools talk 24 languages, savagery, claiming his imagery. Players as gentlemen, bringing back chivalry, decades of revelry. For the king of kings, the house, the roof, destroying minds and clinging desolate populace. Unmade by biblical non-fiction, fiction, reflection, correction. I overrule your objection with physical jewels. 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 With physical jewels.
Flint and steel. This would have been 17th and 18th century fire lighting. I believe it never fully went away. Just it would have been more reserved for the old timers and the really backwoods dwellers, simply because it's very sustainable. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So, in order to start a flint and steel fire, all you really need is any piece of high carbon steel. That can be your knife or your saw or your axe, or you could carry a purpose-built striker. When you carry a purpose-built striker, there are a few different styles, I guess, of strikers, you can say. This is what they call a C-style striker. And I believe there is another one right here that is also a C-style striker. And then they call these ones, I guess, an English style, which is a U-shaped striker. In the end, they all work the same way. You either strike a rock or strike the steel with a rock that is harder than the steel. Pardon my plane flying overhead, I'll take that again. So the way that they work is by either striking the steel or striking a stone with the steel that is harder than the steel itself. And that'll drive fragments of the steel off of the steel. And when those fine fragments hit about room temperature, around 70 degrees or so, they will oxidize and form a spark. And that spark can ignite some pre-charred tinder material in order to create an ember, much like we did with the bow drill fire. And that ember can then be put into a bird's nest and blown into flame. in order to create fire. Now, this piece of steel can probably be handed down from father to son to grandson, and even beyond that before it would be useless for starting fires. Pieces of stone like this exist in nature. I believe these two are both pieces of flint. Actually, all three of these are pieces of flint, just based on the dark color. This one is a piece of chert, and this is also a piece of flint. And I have similar stones in this kit as well. You can also use, I'm drawing a blank here, quartz, jasper, obsidian can be used. Pretty much any stone that has a nice waxy texture. I think this one will probably be easiest to see, especially when I make it wet here. Yeah, it gets nice and shiny. I hope that's focusing for you guys. And another important factor is the way that it breaks. You can see all these, I believe the term is conchoidal fracture, but I could be wrong on that, so you guys can have a laugh at me in the comments. Oh, there goes all my water, just fell over. I should have been paying attention to that. Well, let me fix that mess real quick. And put some more water in there so I can have a cup of coffee. Well, that's all the water now, so let's not spill that one too, okay? We're not far from civilization, so that's it. That's a shame too, it was almost to boil. That's a wet bow drill set. Alrighty, so yeah, conchoidal fractures, I believe. Basically what it means is, you see when it breaks off in all these little facets, and what that does is creates a nice sharp edge. These are all pretty dull, but you can use them as tools, but you can also use them to start a fire. Let's see if we can get a spark on camera in this light here. Not sure if you can see all those sparks that come off of here. And actually, I think this is a more modern one that may have magnesium in the alloy to help it spark a little more readily. Seems to throw a lot of sparks compared to a more traditional high carbon steel strike. Oh, maybe not. It's just a good sharp piece of flint. Alright, let's just, this is what I like to do. I take, this is just lamp wick material, and I literally just light it on fire and blow out the ends. And you can just stack them on top of each other like this, and throw a couple sparks at them. And of course this one is going to make a liar out of me. This one's actually not really charred very well. So let's look in our other kit here. These ones are charred much better. So if you just take one of these, and there we go. So now what you would do is, you'd take this and you'd hold it inside of your tinder bundle, and you blow your tinder bundle into flame and try to recover this as best you could. Snuff it out. Usually you snuff it out just by sticking it back inside your box and closing the lid, and it'll snuff out inside there pretty readily. Another way to snuff it out is just to take your other piece that you have, and if you're wearing gloves, you'll snuff it out pretty easy, or if you have two dry pieces of wood, you could smash it in between. But either way, once you snuff it out, it's out, and you got a nice charred edge here with lots of fibers to start with again. That's not to say, you can't use denim, old t-shirts, old washcloths, that sort of thing. Anything that's cotton will work. Some materials that are available in nature will also work. And I'll probably do another video about the specifics of that sort of thing, just in the thought of trying to keep the video a reasonable length. Alright, so that's flint and steel fires. Let's get on to the next one. Coffee break time. Usually when everything is not so wet, these stoves don't smoke very much at all. It's just we've been having some crazy weather, freezing rain and ice pellets, and then it'll be mild, and then it'll all freeze again, and then it'll snow. Today it's like mild and sunny, so everything is melty. So probably a lot of these things that look dry to me that I'm not really testing for driedness, which there are some ways to do that, which again I'll talk about in another fire video. They are damp and as such pretty smoky. So yeah, get this hot, make a cup of coffee, that is, instant Nescafe, as I call it, Nescafe. Off the steam. Hang that to dry on the tree. Heat up some food. Today on the menu, beef macaroni, IMP, as we do. Lots of food, pretty easy to carry, no extra water required. I could bring a heater with it if I wanted to. Beef macaroni, piece de resistance. There's some caloric value for you. Alrighty, I'll let that do its thing. Cheers. And while that is doing its thing, we shall talk about another fire lighting method, a pretty old one. Alright, so solar magnification. I kind of fumbled on this one. My compass does not have a magnifying lens. I was certain that it did, but it does not. Which is okay for me because I always have one of these with my identification in my pocket, on my person, usually an extra one in the car or one in a fire kit somewhere. So I do have this option. Most of us do know this option. We probably all did it when we were kids, using a magnifying lens of some sort to focus the sun's energy, which the sun has pretty much been hiding behind the clouds most of the day, so I didn't think I would be able to do this one as a demonstration. But yeah, solar magnification, very sustainable method, provided that you have dry tinder material and sunshine. Yeah, so there's that one. Now we'll move on to modern methods. Alright, so modern fire lighting. Let's talk about it a little bit. I mean, I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with one of these doohickeys. Don't mind my little attachments here. We'll go into that a little bit. Good old-fashioned lighter. Now, this is a really cold lighter. It's been sitting outside all day. It's not, it's just below freezing, but it's a cold lighter. It still will draw a flame, and if you warm it up a little bit, stick it in your armpit underneath your coat there, warm up a little more, then it'll throw an even better flame. And that doesn't matter, because if this lighter doesn't work, you can still start a fire with it, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. In my opinion, you should always have one of these at least, if not a couple. And probably one of these too, which is just a pack of matches. And these matches, although effective at working in normal conditions, you can see that they don't really work very well. They go out. This one's making a liar out of me, but they go out pretty easily. So they're not the greatest option. These type of matches, these are the UCO. I don't think they're the Titan. I think they're just the regular stormproof matches. UCO. They make a bunch of different kinds of matches. Some of them are pretty impressive, but these ones are impressive on their own. They strike, they light, they burn for a good long time. I can stick this in the snow and pull it out, and it'll still light. So yeah, good match. Okay. The problem is that for this size of a container, I can only carry 40 matches or something like that, and they do run out. And once they're gone, they're gone. That's pretty much the end of it. Okay. So matches, good to have. Not good to be your main reliant. I pretty much use those to light my candle lantern because it's easy to reach in and light the candle lantern with them. Lighters, again, you should always have one. This is sure flame. You're always going to get a flame out of this until it's dead, and if it's wet, it's easy to recover. If it's empty, you can still start a fire with it, and we'll talk about that a little bit more after what is probably my favorite method, which is a ferro rod. Some people call this a flint and steel, but this is not a flint and steel. We talked about flint and steel earlier. Now, some of them come with a striker, some of them don't come with a striker. Basically what this is, it's an alloy, and this alloy, when struck, produces fragments of metal easily, and those fragments oxidize readily and produce very hot sparks, about 10 times hotter than the spark that comes from a flint and steel. This will give you thousands upon thousands of fire lights, and what this will do that a flint and steel won't do is ignite tinder directly. So let's see if we can get that. So this is just a piece of fat wood that I have here, and I'll take my knife and I'll Just get some scrapings. And a couple of shavings for good luck. So that's not a lot of tinder, I hope you can see there. And you have a fire. So this is a great tool, indispensable, better than the lighter for sustainability, almost as good as a flint and steel for sustainability, but just a lot more user-friendly if you know basic tinders. Even if it's marginal, you can probably get it started with one of these. A little trick that I like to do is I take these little pieces of jute and then I use my old candles and I melt down the old candles and I soak these in wax. So this is a waterproof piece of tinder. You can, stick it in this snow right here, smush it all around. So my hands are soaked now because it's mild out. Dry off my hand here so I don't wet the innards. And then what we do is we can just fluff this up a little bit. And after we fluff this up, I'm just going to use my other ferro rod here. Just because that one is attached. But pretty much all we got to do is just pinch our tinder in front of whatever we're using to strike our ferro rod with. And if we can get a strike here without pinching the fabric in between. Now I'm making myself look bad there. Let me do it with the other ferro rod because I have practice doing it that way. It's just attached to the pouch, so I thought it would be easier to show the camera. And there you go. So this is a nice match that'll burn for a good long time because the tinder is waxed, so it's actually more like a candle, I guess. Yeah, burns for a good long time. So we'll call that bonus tip number 1. Waxed tinder matches. You could do that with cotton thread. You could do that with jute, which is what that is. You could probably do it with hemp fiber, anything that's flammable that will absorb wax somewhat readily. Sorry, pardon my distraction there. Food getting cooked. Okay, so are we still recording here? We are. Awesome. So yeah, so there's bonus tip number 1. Bonus tip number 2, your lighter. This is just some number 36 bank line. I just tied a loop on the end so I can wedge it underneath this little lever. So now what happens is this lighter will... Sorry about that, take 2, because I ran out of battery, and this is what I was talking about. So, Number 36 bank line, tie a loop in the end. It can wedge underneath this little lever here. So what happens when this is in your pack, in your pocket, what have you, you can't depress this button, so you will not run out of fluid while you're not using your lighter. So that's not going to be a problem for you. What else this does, or what else I've done here, is I've made myself a little lanyard. So if you're wearing gloves or something and it's hard to hold on to, your hands are really cold like mine are starting to get now, because the sun's gone and I've been, outside for a few hours here. You can manipulate the lighter a little more easily. And the last thing I've done is I've put a little bit of duct tape. This is Gorilla brand duct tape. Duct tape, I guess, will be tip number 3, because tip number 2 is this. Duct tape is a great tinder, or an assistant to tinder, I guess, if you want to say it that way. If you have tinder that's somewhat marginal, you can take a little bit of duct tape, sort of shred it up into somewhat smaller pieces, and just give it a little light. And once this stuff gets going, it goes for a good long time, burns really hot, and will get your marginal tinders alight probably pretty easily. So that'll be tip number 3, duct tape. Some other modern fire starting implements, or assisting implements, I guess. This is another ferro rod here. See that? But what this, oh, you can see my glue is starting to fail here. Which is why I don't like these things. The ferro rod comes apart from them somewhat readily. But what's good about them is this silver block right here. This silver block is magnesium. Magnesium is a great, I guess, booster to your fire. We'll just shave some of that off there, stick it in a pile, and I'll just hit it with the lighter for you guys. Oh, this lighter's a little bit cold, not lighting. I'll stick it inside here for a minute, put it under my arm, put my knife away for safety, stick my other ferro rod back on my teeth here so I don't lose it. I guess that's what, just a few seconds under the arm there with the lighter. What do we got here? We got flame. My magnesium won't light. How do you like that? Perhaps fire is not quite hot enough. Yeah, I said that. Fire's not hot enough. Probably can't even see me where I got it here anyways. Yeah, see this ferro rod coming off here. Well, and there's magnesium making a liar out of me. That's really strange. Magnesium doesn't want to ignite. There we go. That stuff burns white hot. So, that stuff is handy in getting a fire lit when it works. But realistically, if you arm yourself with the right skills, you shouldn't need something like that, which is only moderately useful at best. As you've seen, that one wasn't very cooperative. So if I only had one spark to make that wasn't going to be very helpful to me, was it? Now, commercial fire starters, or fire starting aids, I guess. They generally all work or are on the same principle. It's usually a waxed piece of tinder, generally cotton, maybe some kind of blend, in a tin. Sometimes they're, in individual servings, which you can, further break down into even smaller servings, which we'll demonstrate with one of the Pathfinder ones here. Mini Inferno, all-weather fire. So this is sure flame. This is sure fire, okay? So I like this one personally because you can reuse it, adjust the flame, but I make my own, which I'll show you right here in a minute. This is just an old tin for, I don't know, beard balm or something. But in here what we have is cotton balls and petroleum jelly, okay? So I'll fluff this up a little bit. It'll take a spark for us. And we'll show you how these types of things work. So this one is the Mini Inferno from the Pathfinder School, Self-Reliance Outfitters there. Shout out Dave, doing awesome things, and actually one of the guys who has inspired me to get back outside. Well, not directly, indirectly, because I actually first started watching Corporal's Corner, and through Corporal's Corner discovered Dave, because, I'm kind of out of touch. I don't follow mainstream stuff that much. And I found Dave, and I found, let's see here, the Wooded Beardsman, and One Wild Crafter, and Zachary Fowler, a couple of other channels, Bob Hansler, and yeah, they just inspired me to get back in touch with the things I used to enjoy when I was young. Anyways, back on to fire. So, Mini Inferno. I'm going to adjust this a bit. Maybe you'll see it a bit better. Mini Inferno. The quick spark here. Fire. And those little discs burn for a good long time. I don't remember exactly. I want to say they said 5 minutes or 8 minutes or something like that. But they burn a good long time anyway. We'll move this out of the way without burning ourselves. And this is mine. Vaseline cotton balls. I just stretched out the cotton ball, soaked up some Vaseline with it, or sopped up some Vaseline with it, squished it all back together. I think there's about a half dozen cotton balls in here. Same thing, instant strike. Lasts for a good long time. This one is basically a candle for you now. You can, take it where you need to go. If you need some light, if you need some heat, you could, put a couple of sticks or rocks beside it, set your pot over top of it, and heat your food or your water like that. I'll just put out the Self-Reliance one because this is my lid. And then when you're done with it, literally, you just throw the lid on top, let it sit for a second, let it cool down a little bit, obviously, if it's hot. If it's not on the bottom, only the lid will get a little warm when you snuff it out. And the live fire one pretty much works in the same method. All you got to do is just fluff it up a little bit, and the more you fluff it, the more it'll burn. And again, just hit it with a spark. Again, you fluff it more. The more you fluff it, the more it'll burn for you. And what I was saying about the live fire one, it doesn't ignite as easy. You kind of have to put a little more work into fluffing it up. As you see, I've actually snuffed it out there. But if you, split it open a little bit and get a good amount of fibers going. Just hit it with the lighter here. Lights. But the live fire is nice because if you get it burning big because you needed a lot of light, and then you wanted to control the flame down, you can make the flame, you know, pretty small. So you can make this last a really long time in an emergency. But again, consumable item, and will disappear eventually. So, you know, for things like this that take a ready spark, I'd say your two best options are going to be fatwood, which we'll talk about in another video, and birch bark. Those are going to be my two go-to tinders that will take a spark readily. So yeah, that pretty much covers modern fire lighting methods. And I know I didn't cover all of the methods. You know, there are a couple other friction fire methods like the saw and the plow, and others too. I know I didn't mention yet. And there are ones that I don't know how to do yet, so as I learn how to do them, I will update things. But yeah, I think my food is hot by now. I am out of water, but I'm going to get some snow and melt that to maybe make another cup of coffee. And yeah, that's our video about fire. There's some bonus information, you know, how to keep your oh no, I'm lying. I missed one for you guys. Okay, so here's my last bonus. A dead lighter is not useless to you. Okay, the material that this is made out of is similar, if not the same stuff that the flint that makes this spark is made out of. So I seem to have lost my. Alright, so we're back. We've got a decent amount of shavings here from our lighter. I'm just going to give it a strike and try to ignite some shavings from a piece of 1x2 that I had lying around. And there we go. Looks to me like we have fire. And also, I can get some on one of my jute matches. It's just a piece of jute dipped in wax. Get a little bit more on there. Get it with a spark. Oh, making myself look bad now. It should be pretty fluffy. I must be a little clammy. There, let's do it this way. This way will always help you out a bit. You can get a little more sparks thrown. Funniest thing is that I just did one of these off camera just to make sure that it was going to work out for me, and now I'm making myself look bad. So try again on a fresh side, just so I haven't contaminated it too much with my clamminess. There you go. Oh, there you go. So yeah, there you have it. Dead lighter, perfectly functional. Not for surefire, obviously, or not for sure flame, I should say. But if you have
a little bit of knowledge and a couple of other natural or homemade items that you can use in conjunction with it, you can get yourself a fire going even with a dead lighter. Have a good one, everybody.
Bonus method there. So let's try to get some food into us and clean up our camp. Make sure we don't leave any mess behind, and head home since it's starting to get late in the day. And for those that are interested, beef macaroni. That's pretty much Chef Boyardee, as most of these IMPs are. If they're pasta based, it's pretty much the same kind of pasta you'll get out of a Chef Boyardee can. Alright, one final look at the campsite from about the same perspective as that we were looking at it. So we were tied up between those two trees right here. There's our fire area on the ramp. Alright. Like, if you look here, it's a very small hole that's about chest high for me, and I'm a small guy. Tons of traffic, mostly animal. Pretty sure we can get out if we walk that way, but I'd rather stay in the woods versus walking through the open field, or relatively open field. We're not super far from the Jeep anyways. I guess we could probably go this way. Let's see. I don't think there's really a trail through here, but we certainly could blaze our own. We'll go the way that this rabbit or squirrel was going. And then we got dog, and then here's man tracks again. Sorry, I'm just looking at all these birch trees. I would love to find a piece of chaga to add to my fire kit and maybe make some tea with. I think I see a hawk over there. I'll walk that way and see if I can see the hawk again. I'm not 100%. Oh no, I'm 100% now. How does this zoom in work? There you go. Here's something interesting. It's a shame to damage the tree so much. But all of these initials carved in the tree, and some of them are way up there, maybe about 20 feet or higher off the ground in some cases. So that tree has been an initial tree for quite some time, it seems. Just trying to get some of it on the cell phone here, so you can see all these initials. And if I come and stand over here, and I look way up there, it looks like DC maybe came here many, many years. And above that, AE, it looks like came here many years, like years after years, and carved their initials there. Okay, let's see if we can find this hawk again. I'm sure he's hunting right now. It's about that time of day. So he should be right in one of these trees here, scanning the field for something food-like. Well, I don't seem to see him anywhere now. I hope I got at least a partially decent shot of him that first time. He was quite large. Great specimen for sure. Especially for such an urban area, he's quite big. Usually we see small red-tailed hawks. I'm not quite sure if he's that or a different breed. Peregrine falcon, or even I think we get bald eagles here from time to time. I'm just following these cross-country skier tracks because of the straight line. This road is closed, so I don't really need to worry about going to the pedestrian crossover, except you still have to be careful because some people drive around the gate if their vehicle is capable. My vehicle is, but there's no sense in being a jerk about it. I'm actually quite capable. I've got the winch and everything, so even if I did get stuck, I would be self-sufficient for recovery, most likely. But, you know, everybody, or most of us anyways, break enough little rules in our day-to-day lives, the ones that are blatantly obvious and just not worth breaking. I had to walk an extra few hundred meters, so not a big deal. I haven't caught fish in this river since I was a kid, but I saw a couple of pictures recently that gave me hope. So I'm certain that I will return here when the weather gets warm and see if I can't catch some fish. for the salmon spawn, and then once that's done, do some carp fishing. That grand old willow there. Weeping willow, I think we call them around here. I don't know what their scientific name is. I'm not really good with that. I gotta get a book or two more and do a little bit more reading. This is another one right here, another big giant one. There's my hand there for you. Well, we're getting back to the Jeep. We'll fire it up here with the fancy technology. Try to get everything loaded into the truck and maybe grab a cup of coffee. Then I have to stop and do some shopping on my way home, as I promised, if everything's still open. I know it's starting to get late. Alrighty, everybody. Back in the Jeep, out of the wind, nice and warm. Gonna go and get a coffee, do some shoppy, and then put all this stuff on the computer and try to get some editing done. So don't mind me, I'm just watching people who don't know how to back up in the parking lot. Not that they'll do much damage to the heap, but just in case. Alrighty, we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for coming.